Hi, my name's Dalton Buckner, and I did my project on discipleship ministry for a small church in New York. So they're located in Smithtown, Long Island, New York. The church is about the size of 100 people that attend a regular service. I chose that church because I actually have a job interview there coming up in a few weeks, and I know the senior pastor there. He's recently got that position. He used to go to Southeastern, so it's been fun watching him do that. And I just wanted to be able to see what a discipleship ministry could look like at that kind of church. It's small and different culture than where I am in North Carolina. For me, it was more about just developing more of a roadmap to where if he wanted to use it, he could, or if I wanted to use it later on down the road, I could. And I thought it would be something that would be beneficial to both me and him. He's more on the practical side of things. He's not really into the whole, mission statement, vision statement, all that. He thinks you should just be more practical and live it out. Like the early churches didn't really have that kind of stuff. They just kind of lived it, which I see as points. But I also think it's good to have your statements so people know what you really want them to understand about the gospel, about what you believe. It's just an interesting concept. That Smithtown, New York's quite big. They also have they're really proud to have 25 parks and 4 beaches up there. So they're pretty proud of that kind of thing. And for that church, he's trying to change the culture. So he's, of course, facing a lot of issues and turmoil. He's recently had to deal with things like a deacon that basically, dealt him a really big blow and hurt him really badly, and left the church. So just controversies, people not liking the changes he's trying to implement and the direction he's trying to go. And they're just trying to be more practical in their application of things, practical in the way they teach, doing expository preaching, living out their lives in a practical, authentic way, just like the early church. So he doesn't really exactly have a vision statement or mission statement, but I came up with one that kind of fits what he was telling me, but it's not one that he actually has in place. For me, it's that the church is there to create authentic followers of Christ that practice practical and relational discipleship. So he wants people that are going to be building each other up. He wants people that are going to be living a practical, authentic Christian relationship with each other, to where they're not just another church, but they're a community. They're built together. They live together. They, argue together. They do everything together, and they build a community to where people, like the early church, always provided for each other's needs, always took care of each other, helped each other through trials and tribulations. And I think that's a great process. It's just really hard to implement, and it's just really difficult to continue with that. A lot of people aren't really willing nowadays to dig deeper into their life, open up their life, and peel back the layers for you to see. They're not willing to, be vulnerable, and that's something that's going to have to change, whether this church or another church. But for his church, he's wanting to create a discipleship program. For me, I looked at his leadership structure. It's a very small church, so currently he only has, he's the senior pastor, and then they have the deacon board, and then they have a finance team kind of thing where they're like office manager situation. 3 people run that. But he's wanting to make it to where there's the senior pastor and associate pastor, there's a director of ministry, and then there's the board of deacons, which eventually he wants to turn into elders and do an elder model. But it's something that's going to be really interesting to watch for him, even if I don't take that job, just to watch how he does that and tries to change that culture up there. He's from New York, so it's fun to watch how he does that, interacts. But he wants that church to live out their faith, to transform the community around them, because it's a lot more hostile community than, let's say, around here, where a lot of people like to claim they're Christian, but they might not all live that lifestyle. Up north, it's a lot different, especially where he's at in Smithtown. So wanting to establish a kind of a balance there. So for me, what I thought we should do for that church context is create a 3-tiered approach. What I mean by that is you have the worship service, which is like, I guess, the large group as they call it in some of the books I've read. And it would just be looking at things, learning to correctly do a worship service, whether that's with expository preaching, which he is doing already now, and then just continuing to build upon that, teaching people through the word, how to live their lives, how to apply it, and then slowly helping them move on to what I would call stage 2, which would be, you could call it, a lot of people call it, like a small group, or some people do Sunday school, or whatever you want to call it. For me, I like to call it a Bible study class, because basically I think the intent for that is to look at things, teach people how to read their Bible, how to interpret, how to observe, how to apply things to their life, so that they're doing it correctly, they can do it on their own, and then they can in turn teach others how to do that. And you want to start with the small group. It would be kind of a small group scenario, so you wouldn't want it to get bigger than 24 people for that Bible study classes, and it wouldn't be based on gender or age, but it could be, if you so wanted to, you could have college and career and all that kind of stuff if you want to base it on that things like some of the churches I have attended do. But I thought it'd be more worth it to just let people interact, because sometimes it's really good to have people that are older than you and younger than you, to where you can really build each other up through experience, through age and wisdom. And it's just really helpful sometimes to have other perspectives in the room. For me, I think that the Bible study class itself would be more of a community-driven approach. So it would be groups that would most likely you could meet at a church, but they're more geared towards meeting at a home. It could be throughout the week, or it could be on Sunday. Not too picky on that part of it, as long as they, like, the big thing is just teaching people how to read their Bible, how to be in community with each other, how to pray for each other, how to kind of open up to each other in a way that a lot of Sunday schools do. You tell them what you're going through in life or how things are going. So it teaches people the process of how to be more vulnerable, how to actually build a community and build relationships with people, to where they are developing these relationships and not just trying to live the Christian life on their own or their own way, which might be the wrong way, but teaching them how to do it correctly, the biblical way, the authentic early church style approach. And then also for that, we're just wanting people to where they're also able to look at what he's preached over the last week and go, okay, so when I read that section of scripture, what am I getting out of that? Am I getting the same kind of concepts as he did? Or, to where people are able to go, I don't explain this more to me, because I didn't get the same thing you did. And I know you're doing the expository style, so you are looking at it from the early church or from the early writers or whoever wrote it and that original audience. And what does that mean? So it just teaching people to be curious about the Bible, teaching people to read the Bible, which is going to be a hard step, because not many people do that, apparently, according to a lot of studies, which is sad. But a lot of the excuses are people just don't know how to read it, or they don't understand it, or they don't know where to start. So that's what that class is more geared towards, just teaching people and walking alongside people to do that kind of process. And then the last stage would be discipleship classes, and you could call them whatever you want, D-Now classes, or there's other names for it. I would just probably refer to it as discipleship class, and that would be gender based. So you either have men or you would have women, and that would be geared to like having 3 to 6 people, because in reality it's great to have the concept of 3 to 4 people, but realistically it's not always possible to get all those people lined up together in the same room each week, whether that's at the house or church or wherever it might be. For discipleship classes, I want people to meet where it's most convenient, whether that's, some people might all want to meet at a coffee shop somewhere, or they might want to meet in somebody's house, or they might want to meet somewhere else, or even at the church, and that's fine. The big thing is with the discipleship group, we'd be digging deeper into a biblical relationship with each other and growing in fellowship with each other. So there would be more commitment to each other. It would be something that people would have to, some churches do covenants with. I would just want to do more of this is what the commitment looks like for this kind of class. It's going to be, at least 18 months to 36 months, kind of a class that you're going to have to attend every week. And we know sometimes things come up, but we want you to meet every week. We want you to grow every week with each other. We want you to be helping each other as you're walking through life, rebuking people that need rebuked, loving people that need love, teaching people that need taught. And so you're helping each other along those journeys in the different paths you're in. And I don't really think age would matter as much either, but we were more focused on the gender, because it's a little hard to be in a class with your wife and try to be vulnerable, or with your spouse or husband or whoever, and be as vulnerable as you could as when you're with a bunch of guys or girls that are same gender as you, where you can be more open about whatever you're struggling with. Because sometimes it's just a little more awkward to have it in front of your spouse when you might be a little ashamed about whatever the issue might be, or you're just struggling with how to deal with things, whether it's even in your marriage, and you want help outside of it so you can do it in a way that's not hurtful or offensive to the other spouse. But we want people to be in this little group, and the point of the group is to where after the 18 to 36 months, they in turn would start their own groups. So they would either start their own groups, start their own discipleship groups, or they become teachers in the small Bible studies, or even better, they would go out and serve God wherever He calls them. So we want the church to be a sending church, a mission-driven church. So the small groups and even the discipleship groups would all be community-minded. They would all be going out in the community and doing things, serving people and loving people, whether that's through the ministries that the church might have, or ministries in general, or just individual volunteer time and doing things. And we just want those people to just continue to grow and to just continue to build upon that. But I think it's going to be a long process. For instance, like the church is going to have a lot of communication for there to be any kind of buy-in into this program. I know some people do like a planning process for 6 months to 12 months, even longer on some, to even kind of implement a strategic plan of this kind of, just even for a small ministry like this. It would take a lot of practice and a lot of communication, a lot of preparing and planning, because the whole 3-stage concept is a lot of moving parts. You'd have to train people to be leaders in those areas besides just a senior pastor and an associate pastor. You would want your deacons to be doing that as well. You would want the people in leadership to be showing the rest of the body of Christ why we do this, why this is important. And you would want to be able to communicate to the church, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, this is why we should do it. And then letting people communicate their feelings towards that, because some people might not really understand what you mean when you say discipleship. Some people might not really understand it when you're saying whatever process you're trying to implement. And so being able to sit down and talk with them, communicate with them, love on them, and help them understand and learn why it's so important, why they need it, and why it's lacking, and why we're trying to fix that problem. For me, it's really important to do a discipleship program. I've never been in one. No church I've ever attended has ever done one. And just hearing the stories and reading the books about it, it makes me sad that we never did. And so that's why with that church, I thought of a way to do that through this project. I thought it'd be really helpful, just to look at it from a perspective of a small church, because I originally grew up in a small church and always wondered, what's the difference between large and small. I attend currently a large church, and I haven't seen much difference in terms of the discipleship process. A lot of the people I've been under, they, I guess, either don't have a discipleship process, or they think of a more naturally driven one, which just really isn't that smart or helpful for constituents or the body of Christ, because we need to be deeply committed to building each other up to where we're more than just babes in Christ, but we're actually mature believers And that's what this discipleship program is going to be about. It's just making mature believers that will grow with each other and help each other. And I think it's going to be something that's going to be really beneficial to Smithtown. And that church is called Grace Church. I probably didn't say it at the beginning, but they're a really unique church, and I hope this really will help them, whether they implement it or not, or do something totally different. But I know they need it and they want it. So it's going to be fun to watch that.